All right, hello everybody, good evening, and welcome into a December 23rd edition of KC Sports Tonight. I am Mark Poulose, joined by Gabe Swartz, and we hope you guys are all having a great and wonderful holiday season. We have four great topics to talk about today here on KC Sports Tonight, but we are going to start with the one that has definitely dominated headlines not only here in Kansas City, but around the football world for the past 24 hours. We're officially a little more than 24 hours after the Chiefs announced that they are moving from Arrowhead Stadium to the state of Kansas today. We had our first chance to speak to some of the Chiefs players and coaches about the move. I was kind of wondering how it was going to be at the facility because those guys, they're not really involved in the business side of the operation. They are purely focused on football, and that was pretty much the sentiment that we got out there today at the facility. But I will say head coach Andy Reid called the move to Kansas, quote, phenomenal. He said the stadium is going to be something that fans can be proud of. He also said it's going to be loud. And Chris Jones, as always, such a funny guy, had a little bit of a funny moment. He said, he's like, when's the stadium open? How far away is 2031? 5 years from now? He's like, I'm not going to be playing, but he wants to have a seat in the suite. So, Gabe, we're still kind of processing all this. A $3 billion stadium, the state of Kansas is going to be paying about $1.8 billion for that stadium. I know, obviously, you grew up many of your years here in Kansas City, but just as a Kansas City guy, a guy that grew up going to Arrowhead Stadium, a guy that grew up cheering for the Chiefs, how has this news hit you?
I think that I can understand the pros and cons of all of it. I think that I've wrestled with wanting Arrowhead to have stayed, and I personally, I don't know if how you feel about it. I felt like in April 2024, a yes vote of letting the stadiums renewing the sales tax that has been in place for years and years was the simplest question, I guess, to Jackson County voters of do you want these teams for sure to stay in Jackson County, and you keep Arrowhead. I know that the plan was not good, and we'll get to that. I know that the Royals plan was not fully complete, but if you look at stadium plans across the country, a lot of cities agree to plans before 100% of the picture has been colored in, and people were not willing to do that for the Royals. We'll see what the end result for the Royals is. I think it's shocking to me that the Chiefs have made a decision before the Royals, given how the genesis of this conversation, I think, for both teams is the Royals expressing that they want it out of Kauffman Stadium more than anything else. But I'm willing to debate the blame pie for the people who ultimately decided or played a role in killing Arrowhead Stadium, or killing what is probably going to be the old Arrowhead Stadium. I don't know if they're going to name the new one Arrowhead Stadium as well.
There's no way they can do that. I've actually seen some fans kind of talking about this, but I think there's so many emotions, so many stories, so many memories baked into Arrowhead Stadium at the Truman Sports Complex. I mean, it looks like they're going to build the stadium out by the Legends, somewhere out in that area. If you name that brand new stadium with a dome, Arrowhead Stadium, I think the people will be like, well, this isn't Arrowhead. Arrowhead is the other place that you left. It just, you can't name a new building the same thing, and I'm sure they're going to try to sell the naming rights. But I like that you bring up the blame pie. I like how you said that, because I know a lot of people today are really trying to figure out how it happened, where it really seemed like the state of Missouri, obviously kind of the incumbent with this team, that's where they were. A lot of people just really never thought that this day would come. But I feel like the writing's kind of been on the wall for this for a long time. I mean, we've seen how Jackson County and the city of Kansas City have kind of been dealing with this, and at no point during this process did it seem like any of the parties in the state of Missouri were ever on the same page. It just felt like the entire time during this whole stadium process, Missouri just kind of was expecting the teams to stay, and then potentially they just were very reactionary. And so I like that you brought up the original vote, which was kind of the genesis of all of this back in April 2024.
2024. Yep.
Yeah. And so when I was thinking about the Chiefs, obviously their move to Kansas, I went back and looked at some of their renovation plans that they had when they were trying to get that 3A sales tax extension. And to me, I mean, when we just kind of look at that, was kind of in my head, I kind of put that as option one, a renovation of Arrowhead that they put up there in 2024. And honestly, to me, it just seemed kind of lazy. Like they were going to have a tailgate village. They were going to have the whole parking lot to themselves. They were going to kind of renovate some stuff. It didn't really seem like a huge, tremendous upgrade to Arrowhead, in my opinion. And now with this, I mean, you look at what the state of Kansas has offered to the Chiefs. It was a $3 billion stadium, a practice facility, a team headquarters. I mean, there was just much more to this offer, like with the practice facility and the team headquarters. And I mean, Jackson County, there were a lot of decisions, a lot of factors that led up to the Chiefs obviously leading there. But a lot of this has to do with the people that people elected. I mean, Phil Lavoda has made no bones about it. I heard an interview today on 610 Sports with our friend Carrington Harrison. Like he pretty much squarely put the blame on Frank White, saying Frank White, the old Jackson County executive, was not talking with the teams. He was kind of being a roadblock in this process. And I mean, if we really want to start to see like where this ball started rolling away from the state of Missouri into the state of Kansas, I think what we really have to go back to is the people of Jackson County electing Frank White to be their county executive. Because, I mean, obviously anyone can run in any election if you get enough votes, and I suppose like whatever the rules are. But, I mean, Frank White won that election. The people chose him, and they ended up choosing a leader that just, in my opinion, this is my opinion, it just did not work out, and he was a lot of the reason behind this. So, Gabe, kind of after you've seen all this kind of fallout, how do you assess how Missouri bungled this situation?
Well, yeah, I think that everything has been so disjointed, dysfunctional, objectively speaking. Every news story that we've written, reported, been out there and talked to people in the county legislature, talked to people in the city council, talked to people in the county executive's office before it was Phil Lavoda and it was Frank White, and he was not very willing to work with people. All of that to say, if we're talking about the blame pie that I was alluding to earlier, the largest share of the pie, and I would still say more than 50% of it, of why the Chiefs will no longer be playing at Arrowhead Stadium, is Lamar Hunt's son, Clark Hunt. He ultimately makes the decision. He ultimately is the one who is going to went up there yesterday and said, we made this decision for the fans, even though they're going to have a less of a capacity than they had at Arrowhead Stadium. The ticket prices will be more expensive. The parking prices will almost guaranteed be more expensive. It's going to be a different experience. There's all these different things. And yes, they're going to sell you on Super Bowls. You worked in Minneapolis. You worked up there in Minnesota, and you know that Minnesota got a Super Bowl. And guess what the national media did? They complained about it. They said, we hated the weather there.
It was too cold.
It was too cold. This sucks. They've not gotten one. There's no plans for them to go back. Detroit has gotten a Super Bowl before. They have a dome. People, it's happened one time.
Yep.
So the idea that this is Super Bowls, plural, not winning them but hosting them as the idea, to me is a little far-fetched, because I think that once people do come to Kansas City and they come to KCK, which is 20 minutes, 25, 30 minutes away from downtown Kansas City, Missouri, and what people would believe to be Kansas City, we're learning that the national people don't necessarily understand that there are two Kansas Cities, and that's been at least amusing in this whole process. But I am skeptical that multiple Super Bowls will come from this, and I am dejected by the idea of the NFL just becoming this cookie cutter. Like in the 70s, we had cookie cutter stadiums, and we had these multi-purpose venues. You had the Astrodome. You had different things where baseball and football was played at the same stadium, and people started building stadiums that looked very similarly. We are 50 years later, 50-plus years later, we are repeating the same history, just with a little different rhyme. And it is these stadiums that have domes that more often than not are built by Manica, and they all look relatively similar. And I think that's the part that bothers people is we're losing outdoor football. We're losing the nostalgia of we look outside and it's either a beautiful day where we have Christmas night coming up this week, and oh my goodness, it's weather in the 60s. That's a pleasant surprise. Or I went to the Dolphins-Chiefs playoff game a couple years ago, and that's an experience I will never forget. And I've been to football games inside of domes. It's different. It's a little more sterile, I would say. You stood outside of Arrowhead and did the reporting in the cold and watched the Coke freeze at that Dolphins game. So I'm just a little Cleveland's doing this, Chicago's trying to do this, Nashville's building a dome, and specifically in the mention from the Chiefs was that the stadiums that they were looking at in the future, Nashville, Vegas, Minneapolis, those were the stadiums that they pointed to as what they're trying to build. I'm just a little worried that it's going to be pretty cookie cutter because if we're being honest, Clark Hunt is not a poor individual. He has a lot of money, but he, among his peers, is one of the cheaper owners in the NFL in terms of cash spending and doing things for the football team. Yes, there's a salary cap, but cash spending plays a significant role in how you build your NFL teams. And if that mentality goes toward footing the bill for this stadium that is not being put on the Star Bonds part, which is capped at the $1.8 billion, as you mentioned, if the difference between doing things that are unique or just doing things that are cookie cutter and that we're seeing in other stadiums around the country is up to Clark Hunt, I'm a little skeptical that that's going to happen. So that's a lot of thoughts.
No, but I really do agree with your cookie cutter take. But I think a lot of that kind of comes around. It's a little bit of like, the Hunt family, the Chiefs. They go to these other stadiums, they go to these road games, and they see what other teams have. They see what other owners have, and it's a little bit just keeping up with the Joneses. Because in the division here in the AFC West, they go to SoFi Stadium, which is probably the nicest stadium on planet Earth. They also go to Allegiant Stadium, which recently hosted a Super Bowl, and then they come back home to Arrowhead Stadium, which obviously has a lot of emotions, a lot of nostalgia, but is it as nice as those other facilities? No. So I think a little bit of this, the Hunt family probably looked around the league and said, hey guys, we're kind of getting left in the dust, and I know that we have an iconic stadium, a historic venue, but it's just at the end of the day, I mean, what matters to people? It's dollars and cents, and if you want to maximize your money, you want to try to make some more, you're not going to stay at Arrowhead Stadium, and obviously we don't need to rehash all of this. The Chiefs made the decision that they made, but still 24 hours later, still hard to process. Boy, has it's been a hard, I think, last 2 weeks for Kansas City sports fans, with Mahomes tearing his ACL, with the stadium decision, and also going on to our next topic, the Chiefs host the Broncos on Christmas Day, Thursday night, for their final home game of the year. And obviously with Mahomes out, Chris Oladokun is starting. Gardner Minshew is dealing with a knee injury as well. And there's one really big storyline to look out for, because the Chiefs are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. And that storyline is this is potentially the very last time Kansas City will get to see the future Hall of Famer Travis Kelce play a game at Arrowhead Stadium. So, Gabe, I mean, Travis, what can we say? 11-time Pro Bowler, 10 NFL records, multiple Super Bowl, 3-time Super Bowl champion, 13 years in the league, set to be married in June to the great Taylor Swift. If Thursday is the last time we see Travis Kelce here in Kansas City play at Arrowhead Stadium, what's probably going to be your top memory of number 87?
Man, that's a great question. There's so many moments that he's been a part of. It's like asking...
No, it's a tough question.
It's like asking what's your favorite Patrick Mahomes throw?
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same.
And people ask Mahomes the same question, and he always has answers that people aren't usually used to. He always points to that 4th and 9 against the Ravens in 2018, and that's
had to have it.
Not a year that they won the Super Bowl. It's not a year that they went to the Super Bowl. But those things stick out to him. I think that the biggest thing, or the game that I think of for him, is probably the Texans-Titans game, or the Texans-Chiefs game, the AFC
when they were
divisional, down 24-0.
Yep.
He scores 3 touchdowns in that 4 touchdowns in the second quarter run for the Chiefs. completely flips the game, along with several other things happening there. But there's so many of them. And again, to speak to like the bummer of what this year has been, you and I were discussing this off camera before the show of what's the crowd going to look like on Thursday night? What's the crowd going to act like, given the product on the field on Sunday? I think was probably one of the more atrocious showings in the entire Andy Reid era against the Titans, because they were trying to win that game, and they lost by 3 scores to the worst team in the NFL, which is pretty rough. Pretty rough. So, and you couple in the decision to just now announce that you're leaving Arrowhead. So those 3 things of the record, the time of year, the divisional rival, Travis Kelce's potential last game, like that's the one saving grace of this night. And just that you would think, given that we're not slapping people across the face with, oh, you just realized that you're not in the playoffs, or not, you have no hope. The people who are going to this game, I would hope, would have a little of like Christmas spirit, some Christmas joy, that it's not just a miserable experience. And like, you know what you're signing up for going into this. You're aware that Gardner Minshew's not playing. You're aware that Patrick Mahomes is not playing. You're aware that the Chiefs lost by 17 on Sunday to the Titans. All of these things coupled in. And I hope people are aware, some of the comments that we got at Arrowhead today, of people being like, I hope that this is not the end, but it's really pointing to it. I just hope that fans are appreciative of it. And I know that Sunday night, based on the way that the Chiefs do player intros, is going to be the offense. And typically it's Kelce second to last, Mahomes last. There's not going to be Mahomes last. I hope that Chris Oladokun gets his flowers and gets his celebration, and good for him that he gets to start. But they better introduce Travis Kelce last.
See, well, this is how you know how Gabe knows ball, and that Gabe is at a lot of these games.
Yeah.
Because, the offense is slated to go out of the tunnel for the player entrances. And I love that you brought that up, because for I think 2 weeks in a row, they brought out defense. And I remember I was going through some of the video that Marlia, Neal, and Katie brought back from the stadium on last Sunday. And I looked at Marlia and I go, defense ran out again. That doesn't make sense, because usually they alternate offense, defense. Why? This is potentially, I'm not saying that it is, I'm saying this is potentially a clue. Why did defense go back to back? I think Gabe might be onto something, because offense could be running out on Thursday for Travis Kelce's final game. And obviously, as Gabe said, Travis would be the last guy's name called out when he runs out of the tunnel. Certainly would be a very special moment. But Gabe, I'm kind of intrigued to see how this team comes out and plays on Thursday, because on Sunday, obviously, they just did not look good. But I guess the reason I bring this up is for like the last 3, 4, 5 seasons, obviously it's been Super Bowl or bust. There has been absolutely nothing in between. And even up until the game where they played against the Texans before Patrick tore his ACL, it was still Super Bowl or bust. And then now, like, we've just been slapped into the harsh reality that it's over, that it's not happening. So I'm very intrigued to see how they come out there on Thursday. But one thing that we're going to have to see is Chris Oladokun. We're going to have to practice that several times this week. But he is going to start on Thursday night against the Chiefs. Here's a little bit of his scouting report. He's going to start for the Chiefs. Here's a little bit of his scouting report. He's 28 years old, originally from Tampa, Florida, stands at 6'1", 215 pounds. He was originally picked by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 7th round of the 2022 NFL draft. In his college career, he played at 3 different schools. He first started at South Florida in his hometown of Tampa. Then he transferred to Samford, Samford, and then he finished his career at South Dakota State. He's a former 3-star prospect out of high school. He was released by the Steelers in the 22 preseason, has been with the Chiefs ever since. I was actually very surprised by how he played on Sunday in such a tough situation, because I know going into that week against the Titans, Gardner Minshew was going to be getting almost all of the reps at practice, simply because Gardner hadn't gotten almost any all season since training camp. And now, last Sunday, Chris Oladokun kind of got thrown into that game, and I thought he had a little life to his ball game, a little bit better than officially a third string quarterback than I would have suspected. But Gabe, I guess what stood out to me today when he was speaking at the podium was how composed he was, how much of a leader he seemed, and he really did seem. The moment didn't seem too big for him. What did you kind of think? What do you think of his play on Sunday and then on Thursday?
Yeah, I think that it was apparent in the way that he talked today that every once in a while you have these things that you're reminded of why these guys are in the NFL, and that at some level they were the man, and he was the man at South Dakota State, and that's a good program, a good FCS program that is very competitive in the FCS playoffs more often than not, and he was a big reason for it when he was there. I thought on Sunday he was better than Gardner Minshew, and he was better than Gardner Minshew in large part because, as we've seen throughout this season, the Chiefs' offense, when it has been just in structure, has not been very effective, and a lot of the stuff that worked for Patrick Mahomes, the creating out of structure and all of the stuff that we lamented because it at least was a contributing factor in him getting hurt, was not available with Gardner Minshew, who doesn't run and doesn't, when he did run, got himself hurt against the Titans as well. Oladokin was able to do that stuff. He has a tall task Thursday night. The Broncos defense is really good. It's a divisional rivalry game. It's a franchise that absolutely wants to get revenge on the Chiefs for the years and years and years of victories that Patrick Mahomes and this franchise and Andy Reid have put on them.
I don't think they've locked up the division yet either.
And they have not. Yeah, exactly. They've not locked up the division, and I don't believe that they can. I don't believe that they can do it either because Saturday's game for the Chargers against the Texans still is impactful for the divisional race. We could end up with Chargers-Broncos Sunday Night Football Week 18 to decide the AFC West, and potentially in the Broncos' case, to decide the 1 seed. So they still have plenty to play for. A long way of saying, Greg Daly, digital manager here at KCTV, pointed out to me that a decade ago, the Chiefs played the Broncos, a pretty pathetic Broncos team, a year after they had won the Super Bowl, and did some rude things, I would say, running the Dontari Poe pass play on Christmas night. And Greg's point was, I think that the Broncos, if they have the opportunity to do so, could attempt to run some disrespectful plays against the Chiefs to get him back, even though it's a different coaching staff and all that kind of stuff. The franchise and stuff, they know the history.
And Sean Payton,
all that to work, and Sean Payton's not exactly
Sean Payton, he'll call up some plays. He'll turn the knife in your side. But hey, that's what football is about. If you don't like it, then go out and beat them.
Yep.
Those are the rules of engagement. We all know them, and that's why they play the game. So it's going to be very exciting to see what happens out there on Thursday. One other note, though, is potentially also Matt Nagy's last game as offensive coordinator for the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. There's a report out there that he has not signed a contract with the Chiefs for next season. There's a lot of people that have been linking him to that Tennessee Titans job. Obviously, the Titans have a former number 1 overall pick at quarterback Cam Ward. He played pretty good on Sunday against the Chiefs, and also their general manager is from the Chiefs organization. So things really are lining up there. And also today, head coach Andy Reid said that he did think Matt Nagy deserves to be a head coach in the NFL. So we'll see what happens with that. But we have about 2 more topics and about 6.5 more minutes, so we're going to get on to those ones next. We're going to go on with the guy who's the potential number 1 overall pick in next year's NBA draft. Of course, we are talking about KU's freshman phenom Darryn Peterson. Yesterday against the Davidson Wildcats, he missed another game due to a lingering kind of cramping issue. Peterson has now played in just 4 of 13 possible games. And then after the game last night, KU head coach Bill Self said that Darryn Peterson will not play again until he's at 100%. Self said this decision came from the family of Darryn Peterson. He also said that he does agree, but Gabe, this to me is very interesting because Bill Self is in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. He is one of the best college basketball coaches, I would say, in the last 50 years, maybe even longer. Bill Self knows how to coach basketball, but he does not get to determine when this player, Darryn Peterson, will return to the court. What do you kind of make of the latest news in this whole Darryn Peterson health situation?
That this would never have happened 20 years ago and wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. The players having control, the players having money, negotiating power, leverage, all of these different types of things. It just makes it different. Like, Bill Self can say what he said, and I think that this was like the final straw from Bill Self's perspective of he feels like he has been the one who has had to put out all of the messaging.
Yep.
Darryn Peterson's family is not saying anything about his status. All of the messaging comes from KU Athletics, comes from Bill Self. You've seen the quote graphics on social media, all of these things. And the last resort that Bill Self has of thinking that Darryn Peterson probably should be able to play, that some other players maybe would play, that I think some of us would question, when has cramping ever been a thing that you leave a game a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and you're still unable to play? Like, it, to me, I'm not a doctor. It doesn't make sense to me what the status is. But Bill Self says it's the family's decision. They're waiting for him to feel great. And then he said, and I don't know what Darryn feels like, so I don't know when he will feel like that. But it's day to day. That to me says he's practicing, he's not playing games. So yeah. Bill Self knows he's capable of practicing. For some reason, he still doesn't feel it. I don't know. I really do think, though, the next step, and the team is probably deserving of it, is January 3rd. If he's not playing in the Big 12 opener after 3 weeks off from the NC State game, the last time that he played, I don't know what you can rely upon him. You still would take him if you can, because we saw what, like 3 years ago, KU won a national championship relying upon Remy Martin in March, and he didn't give them much, if anything at all, throughout non-conference or throughout Big 12 play. Yep. The difference is that team had Ochai, who was the Big 12 Player of the Year and an All-American. This team doesn't have an All-American outside of Darryn Peterson. They have a really good team. They have a team that plays really well together, and they have a team that I think Bill Self loves, but I don't think he loves this situation.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. But I think what's really just frustrating a lot of KU fans about this whole situation is just the last 2 years, excluding this year, they just didn't go the way that KU fans wanted. And I know at the end of last year, it's kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, yeah, this year was really tough. It didn't go the way we wanted. But boy, look at next year. We're going to have the #1 overall player in the country coming right here to Lawrence, Kansas. And it was always kind of that carrot at the end of the stick. But it's just like you never get the carrot. And it's just the fans are just so frustrated. But I will say, Peterson, we got some video of him when he came here to Kansas City and played against Missouri. Sports director Marlia Campbell actually shot it. And, he was very clearly getting some work done on his quad here against Missouri at the T-Mobile Center. So, obviously, we want what's best for Darryn Peterson. We don't exactly fully know what's going on with his medical situation. It sounds like maybe no one on the whole planet does. I know the University of Kansas Health System has some tremendous doctors, some of the best ones in the entire region. But, Darryn Peterson right now, it looks like there is an issue. Whatever. And NC State, they showed a replay. He did look a little gimpy. He didn't look right when he was running back up the floor one time, and then he has to get out. So hopefully he is okay, and hopefully it's just not an atypical medical situation that no one knows how to solve. Hopefully it's just something that isn't a big deal, but we can find that out later. All right, one last topic. We got about 90 seconds. We'll rip through it. The Missouri Tigers suffered the program's worst loss in the bragging rights game history last night. The men's basketball team lost 91-48 to 20th-ranked Illinois. The Tigers shot just 29% from the field, and they were out-rebounded by 19. Illinois was led by a kid from Shawnee Mission Northwest that actually led the entire game in scoring, a big part of that reason why Missouri lost that one. But, Gabe, Missouri, quickly here, I think they're pretty fraudulent. They're 10-3 so far this year, but their wins are against Howard, Southeast Missouri, Virginia Military Institute, Minnesota, Prairie View A&M, never heard of them.
Worst team in Division
South
I.
Dakota, South Carolina State, Cleveland State, Alabama State, and Bethune-Cookman. And then when they played some quality teams like Notre Dame, Kansas, and Illinois, they have lost. Gabe, quickly, is Missouri a fraud?
The results speak for themselves.
Yeah, they definitely do. When they played these Power 4 opponents, it has not looked good. We know that Missouri obviously has a lot of talent on their team, like Mark Mitchell, a tremendous talent, but some of those guys around him, boy, they're going to have to step up. They're going to have to find some depth on this team, maybe find some ways to win some games, because I know they have 10 wins, but boy, some of those teams are just cupcakes. So hasn't been great for Missouri so far this year against quality opponents. Hopefully they can turn that around. But that is a look at KC Sports Tonight on this Tuesday, December 23rd. If we don't see you again before Christmas, either Gabe or myself, have a good and Merry Christmas, and we will see you all later. Take care.